Call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 58 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of June 23, 2022. Before I proceed, I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognise you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. Please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. Please address all comments through the chair. Screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. Finally, a reminder to all that use the House that the use of a House-approved headset is mandatory for remote participation in parliamentary proceedings. If a virtual participant is not wearing an appropriate headset, interpretation cannot be provided and therefore that person will not be able to participate. In accordance with the committee's routine motion concerning connection tests for witnesses, I am informing the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. Pursuant to Standing 1082 and the motion adopted on January 18, 2022, the committee is resuming its study of the ecosystem impacts and the management of pinniped populations. I'd like to welcome our first panel of guests. By Zoom, I believe we have Mr. Robert Hardy, Fisheries Consultant. Representing the Atlantic Groundfish Council, we have Chris Viscato, Executive Director, by video conference, and as well representing the Prince Edward Islands Fishermen Association by video conference, we have Mr. Leclerc, Vice President, and Mr. Arsenault, Chair of the Groundfish Advisory Committee. Thank you for taking the time to appear today. You will each have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement, and I would invite Mr. Hardy to begin, please, for 5 minutes or less.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Standing Committee of Fisheries and Oceans and other presenters. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today on the truth about capelin and its importance to the ocean ecosystem. While there is always a push by environmental groups, ocean conservationists, and animal rights activists to reduce and cease commercial fishing activity, especially for capelin, there is never any reference to predation by seals. Seals are in fact one of the largest predator groups that consume capelin in significant volume, much more than any commercial fishing effort. In this case, DFO and the international scientific community agree that capelin...
On a point of order, there seems to be a problem in the room. The interpreters have pointed out that they're having trouble with the sound quality. There are microphones that are open in the room that are causing problems.
I'm not getting it either. There's no... Can we have the translation check? That wasn't coming through.
There was an open microphone in the room which altered the sound. I think it's closed now, so we can resume.
Okay, in the case of DFO and the international scientific community, they agree that capelin are a primary prey species and food for all seals. This because capelin is abundantly available over a large geographic area and can be found both inshore and offshore during different seasons. Capelin are also a small fish which can be consumed whole, are rich in oil, and have eggs, all of which are a preference of pinnipeds. DFO estimates that harp seals, one of 6 seal species in Atlantic Canada, consume upwards of 1,000 metric tons of capelin annually. That, in comparison to 24,000 metric tons of commercial quota in 2022. This accounts for just 2.5% of the estimated harp seal consumption, and that does not include the other 5 seal species. I use DFO estimated daily consumption for harp seals, which is the lowest of any country, at 3.3 kilos. The average number of pieces of capelin per kilo is 60 pieces. So in one day when capelin are available, a single harp seal can consume 198 fish. If that was extrapolated over 1 million seals, it could be 198 million. Keep in mind, the DFO estimate for consumption is less than half of other numbers. The limit reference point for capelin has recently been set at 640 kilotons, or 640,000 metric tons. Last year, the capelin biomass index was estimated at 262 kilotons, and it is expected to be at or above that level this year. A decision to impose a moratorium on the commercial capelin fishery because of mounting pressure from environmentalists that have no commitment to industry, to coastal communities of Canada or its people is unjustifiable. I suggest that removing 24,000 metric tons of quota, representing 2.5% of harp seal consumption, will do little to increase capelin stocks. Using the quota for last year, 24.7 million kgs, if we look at the population of harp seals of 7.6 million, it would take less than 1 day to consume that entire quota. Our friends in Iceland continue to have prolific, bountiful fishery resources. Iceland closed its capelin fishery in 2018 and caught only 25% of its quota that year, or 40,000 tons. In 2019 and 2020, their capelin fishery remained closed. The Icelandic Maritime Research Institute proposed that the capelin catch in 2022-2023 would not exceed 275,000 tons, which was an increase of 57,000 tons from their initial advisory in the fall. This also meant that the Norwegian quota increased from 43,000 tons to 48,000 tons. Iceland's limit reference point suggests that 400,000 tons of capelin should be left in the water. What are the differences between Norway's and Iceland's fishery, apart from the significant difference in quotas and that both countries fish much harder than Canada? They do appear to have a more reliable science program, and notably, Iceland has practically no seal predation. They only have 25,000 animals, all species. And Norway has not documented a seal invasion since the mid-1990s. Their predominant harp seal species remains further north and entirely offshore. In closing, I include a media quote from a senior DFO scientist. For years, fishermen have been told it's fishing that drives populations. He said DFO manages fishermen, not fish. So it's only natural fishermen might consider seals as a competitive fishery. He called it predator envy. From my lifetime experience and perspective, there is no envy in the current state of Canada's fishery or its science program. It's time for real action and not endless debate. Thank you for your valuable time, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. And I was reminded when you said you were going to, your remarks would be around capelin and capelin stock. I was reminded that Canada Day last year, I visited a place up in Witless Bay, and they had a capelin eating contest. And I won first place because I eat my capelin faster than anyone else. But now I don't think I can keep up to a seal, according to the numbers you just gave me. but I held my own that day. So I'll go now to Dr. Biscotta for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this meeting. Discussions on the impacts of pinniped populations often focus on direct impacts on commercial species. Images of eviscerated cod at the bottom of coves or stomach contents from harvested animals fill our minds. We must remind ourselves that pinniped impacts are much broader and extend far beyond direct predation. Seals eat fish. Seals eat crab. Seals eat an awful lot of things to the tune of 1,000 to 2,000 kilograms per animal per year. Every item a pinniped consumes is at the expense of some other component of the marine ecosystem. More pinnipeds, more impacts. For instance, last week, DFO Newfoundland announced that capelin populations were at critically low levels, driven by challenges in adult survival. Capelin are a key prey for an array of animals, from the iconic northern cod through to cetaceans and pinnipeds. But with 8 million harp seals sharing the same marine space, capelin have failed to recover despite a near absence of fishing. This cascades directly into stalled northern cod recovery and impaired performance of other groundfish stocks. Is this because seals are eating all the cod? Likely not. Could the 8 million metric tons of prey, including capelin, consumed by harp seals annually be preventing the recovery of capelin stocks, thus impairing cod production? This is far more likely. We hear of other foraged fish stocks such as mackerel and herring experience prolonged periods of low productivity, with many subject to moratorium. Again, we have a common thread. These foraged species are preferred prey of pinniped populations at historical highs and are being cropped off before they reach other ecosystem components or even sexual maturity. Food webs have been forced to restructure to new and lower productivity states for many commercially important fish species. The direct and indirect impacts of pinnipeds are easily observed throughout Atlantic Canada. Most groundfish stocks demonstrate higher natural mortality today than in any previous time period, and diets demonstrate an absence of diet items also preferentially selected by pinnipeds, namely large mid-trophic level forage species such as herring and mackerel. Their absence is manifested in groundfish populations as lower condition estimates, poorer growth, lowered reproductive output, and high levels of natural mortality. We cannot neglect direct impacts. Pinnipeds have annual distributions that strongly overlap with depleted fish stocks. Satellite tagging has shown clear overlap with seasonal cod aggregations. Evidence later bolstered by direct diet analysis and modeling work proving the link between pinniped consumption and high natural mortality in dwindling cod populations in the southern Gulf of St. Lawrence, creating a prognosis of extirpation even in the absence of human-induced mortality. It is not just marine ecosystems that are vulnerable. Entire riverine food webs can be disrupted by the arrival of a seal herd, feeding heavily on whatever fish are locally available, included depleted Atlantic salmon, smolts, and adults. The arrival of a seal herd becomes synonymous with the denuding of local populations of salmon, trout, sucker, and whitefish, and local residents see and will speak of this. Clearly, the impact of a novel and aggressive piscivore will no doubt trickle down through the entire system to some new and unexpected stable state far different from where it began. Our challenge is to translate pinniped populations to ecosystem impacts. Comparing pinniped consumption with other ecosystem components at a landscape level misrepresents the problem, as the greatest impacts are often local, driven by overlap in both time and space. Disentangling the role of pinnipeds in the ecosystem means a fulsome appreciation of diets and distribution across the entire year, and not just within short snapshots. Only then can we speak with certainty on the role they play, how they may impact surrounding trophic levels, and how the system may respond to lower pinniped abundances. Our current understanding is heavily restricted both spatially and temporally, creating severe biases in interpretation. For instance, how can we speak to pinniped diets when sampling is heavily spatially biased to represent only a small portion of the pinniped herd itself? We must acknowledge that if pinniped consumption was reduced from current levels and other ecosystem components would have additional resources, and perhaps some would experience growth, for example, cod. Determining the strength of this response is predicated on the precision around our understanding of pinniped impacts in the greater ecosystem. Finally, if we are to accept that the role of pinnipeds in the marine ecosystem will continue at their current population levels, then we must accept that many of our fish stocks will also persist at lower total levels and productivity than historically observed, unable to rebuild historic levels under any conditions. This period of pinniped overabundance now represents the new normal. Stocks cannot be rebuilt with the current ecosystem structure favoring pinnipeds. This must be incorporated into rational modern reference points and rebuilding plans commensurate with the current expectations of productivity, as many depleted fish stocks may actually be considered fully rebuilt under the current level of predation and productivity offered by pinniped populations at current levels. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to addressing any questions from this esteemed committee.
Thank you. You were right on time. Now we'll go to the Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association. I don't know if it's one statement or if both of you are going to have part of a statement each to make up to 5 minutes. So I see Mr. Arsenault is turning on his mic.
Yeah, we're going to split it.
Okay. Whoever is starting can start off when you like, and you get 5 minutes between you.
Okay, good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Danny Arsenault, representing BIFA, and Kenneth will be taking over for the last part of this thing. The overpopulation of seals in Atlantic Canada, it's a grave concern of ours. It's something that membership, and both Kenneth and I are very passionate about addressing. Harvesters, we have 1,275 independent core fish harvesters who fish a variety of species, namely lobster, crab, pelagics, and groundfish on PEI. I have been a fisherman this will be my 50th year underwater fishing. I bought my fleet when I was 18 years old. At the time, we fished from ice out until we couldn't fish no longer late in the fall. We didn't stop fishing. We had something to fish, all different stocks. Today, I'm a lobster fisherman. Everything else is gone. There's no more fisheries for us. Even our bait fishery, we always caught our own bait. Today, we buy our bait. In a 2-month season this year, it cost me $40,000 to buy bait. I never had to buy bait. I could always catch my own. I hope you all have some copies, and we have some photos. I don't know if they're being distributed, showing the destructions that seals have caused on our fisheries. Some of these photos were shared in 2012 when I appeared before the Senate committee in Halifax as a representative from the PIFA. As the fish are directly impacted by the overpopulation of grey and harp seals in the southern Gulf. Back 11 years ago, we thought we were at the 11th hour then, and everybody around the table said the same. It has to be now. We have to control this population. I can't help but wonder where would our groundfish, pelagic stocks, and stuff look like right now had that happened. Our government has been scared, bullied, whatever you want to call it, not to take any action on seal populations because of pressure and misinformation from certain NGO groups, implications with the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and that could impact exports to the U.S. I recently read an article, came out of Texas. The American government currently has a bounty on the wild hogs. They're causing havoc down there in the agriculture business. What they have been doing is to have a bounty on them to get as many out of their way as they can. And I see they have also introduced a bait, maybe warfin, to control them. They are bringing them under control because of what's happening. The same scenario as we have with seals. I don't understand that one country can penalize another for doing what they are also doing themselves. This is unjust. We're here today showing you the impacts of seals through pictures, other experiences on the water. We need the story reflected to others in the public, and with groups and countries trying to downplay what is really happening to our fish stocks. In the past, we've been told it's the fisher's fault. The government can't keep falling back on that response. We haven't had a fishery for 31 years. We can't keep hiding from the seals any longer and include talking about them. We desperately need to bring the seal herd down to a manageable level. This needs to be step one. And then work on a realistic and effective hunt and that we can maintain and control the seal populations as we go forward. We did not see attacks on halibut, for an example, until about 10 years ago. As our other stocks disappeared, they turned to something else. And they were attacking halibut, taking them off our hooks, whatever, tearing them off. Some fish are worth up to $1,500, and you haul it up, it's destroyed. It's not very encouraging. These vacuum cleaners of the sea eat 40 to 50 pounds of fish a day, and there's millions. Do the math and see where our stocks are. But what bothers me even more and worries me more about all this, they're not done yet. We've got 2 stocks left in the Gulf, crab and lobster, and we've already got information and proof of what they're starting to do there. We see lobster claws laying on the shore off of big lobsters. They knock the claws off of them and eat the big one, eat the lobsters. The crab, they've got their stomachs as high as 150 in their stomachs. This is happening while we're talking. It's happening, and if someone doesn't step up and do something, our coastal communities are gone. They're done. We won't have anything left. So it's a very, very important that something gets done now and before everything is destroyed. I guess that, and I will pass it on to Kenneth. If you have more time at the end, I would really love to be able to go down and just to give you an example of what happened in the last 50 years that I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you for that, but the 5 minutes are up, so I guess Mr. Leclerc will have to try and get his statement out in a question or two along the way.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. We'll now go to questions, of course, by the members. I will remind the members that the clerk has advised me we can go till 6 p.m, and that means we'll have 55 minutes for each hour. So we'll split it down the middle. So we'll go now to Mr. Small for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for being here today and taking time out of their busy schedules to help us out with this very important study. My first question is to Mr. Hardy. And just briefly, Mr. Hardy, what's the biggest impediment to carrying out a meaningful pinniped harvest?
The biggest impediment would be the marketability of the products and having access to markets to encourage full utilization. At the current time, there is not adequate markets for the resource or the quota that's available.
So as to provide for full utilization of harvested pinnipeds?
I didn't get your full question there, Mr. Small.
Oh, I'm sorry. What products have been developed so as to provide for full utilization of harvested pinnipeds? What products are out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to have full utilization of pinnipeds, no matter the species, I mean, you're going to deal with the skin, you're going to deal with the fat, and you're going to deal with the meat and bone component. So, currently there is a small industry for fur and leather. There is experimentation going on with the meat for a variety of products. Some of them are very exciting. And of course, we're all aware of the omega-3 component, which is the best omega-3 available in the world from any species for a number of reasons. But there needs to be more investment into product and within the industry to create full utilization.
So, to your knowledge, has the current government done anything to market these products?
Mr. Small and the committee, I mean, I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I worked at the university here for the first 9, and then I went out in industry. I've been involved with 4 sealing companies throughout my career, and I watch what happens within the industry pretty closely. And I haven't seen things change in the past 20 years in terms of market access. I know that industry constantly asks for support from the federal government because trade is a federal government responsibility. But nothing has become easier to market and to promote products into different countries.
My next question, Mr. Chair, for Mr. Hardy, is there any aspect of the pinniped that could be used in foreign aid?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in my opinion, and I speak on it frequently. If we are to take any numbers of seals, regardless of the species or location in Atlantic Canada or Western Canada, then in order to handle the volume, we have to look at food aid, high nutritional rich protein powders, and meals made from the seal. And at the same time, you would recover additional omega-3 oil, and you would have other byproducts which could be developed. But in order to access volume, I believe that we need to look at a nutritional food aid program for the 9 million people in the world that starve to death every year.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. So presently, which countries would we be able to focus on immediately to develop markets for products so that we can start harvesting the current quota of seals, and that'll be just in harps, and I'm not sure if I think there's a small quota in grays, but you might be able to let me know on that. But where could we go right now?
Well, that'd be difficult to say where we could go right now, because there is not a whole lot of market out there. There isn't a whole lot of accessibility out there. That's something we have to work at. But it needs to be done. It needs to be addressed, just like we talk about the predation part. The market and the access needs to be dealt with ASAP.
So we know we're banned from the U.S. market since 1972 with the invocation of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. How impactful would it be for the marketing of pinniped products if we could somehow get that Marine Mammal Protection Act amended and gain access to the U.S. market? How much potential is there for us, Mr.?
Yeah, I think that the removal or negotiation on the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which was put in 1972, I believe, mainly to protect whales, and given the increase in pinnipeds internationally, not only in Canada, but we have by far the largest numbers. The removal or negotiation on the Marine Mammal Protection Act would be critically important to doing new business and developing products and markets for seals. I mean, today I believe the President of the United States is visiting Canada, and I know for sure the Marine Mammal Protection Act is not on the agenda, but it's going to have to be on someone's agenda. And I believe our foreign affairs and our various parliamentarians need to negotiate. And believe it or not, the U.S. has a problem with seals, and they don't have millions.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. I'll be wearing this tie tomorrow in the House of Commons.
Don't pull that too tight, Mr. Small. Look yourself.
Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Chair.
And I don't know anyone here that wants to give you mouth to mouth. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Quickly, a question to was it Mr. or Dr. Vascato? Mr. Vascato?
Yep, you can use either one.
Oh, but it is doctor, is it?
Yes.
Your research, okay. On March the 9th before the committee, Dr. Vino from the FOPO said, and it's my notes here, the size of the seal herd is having little impact on East Coast fisheries. Comment?
I would call that a stretch. The reason I would say that is if you take a look at just simply from maritime region, and this is where DFO's own scientists have demonstrated this substantive increase in natural mortality in many of our groundfish stocks, and they've all been synonymous with the presence of seals. If you go just around in the corner up into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, you find that many of DFO's own stock assessments are saying for something like yellowtail flounder, for American plaice, for southern Gulf cod, the main source of natural mortality is being derived from seal predation. And we see, and those same documents will say there's very, very little hope of improvement unless we deal with that natural mortality problem. If you go further north up into Newfoundland waters, there's not quite the willingness to make that tight link, but I would certainly question that conclusion that was tabled based upon the research provided by DFO.
Okay, thank you. My next question is Mr. Arsenault. I'll be candid. I've known him most of our adult life. You've been involved in the fishery. As a lifelong fisher and somebody been very involved in the industry in a leadership role based on conservation, your work is eminent in preserving the fishery for the future. What is DFO science missing in the relationship between seal eating habits and the size of the Atlantic fish stock? Why is there, in your view, a disconnect? Are they accurately capturing how seals feed in Atlantic Canada waters?
I don't think so. I think maybe they are more now because if you go back a few years ago, I remember when all this started taking place and no one could really understand what was happening, we had a moratorium in place and the stocks were going to be rebuilt in a few years and everything would be back to normal. But all of a sudden, it started going the other way. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And when we questioned them at groundfish meetings, we said, well, the seals are eating all the fish, that's why. Oh no, they said, we have proof that they're not. And we asked, what is it? Well, we find the small fish, we are finding some with, and they proved it was cod, like through the
They're
otoliths.
finding some in their stomach content.
In their stomach contents, the otoliths, bones in their heads, how they identify it. But they said, we do not find any large cod. They said they are not eating large cod. At that time, we spoke up almost simultaneously around the table. Oh, well, why are the cod disappearing off of the large cod off of our trawls and our nets, and all we're catching is the heads? Because the heads are bigger and heavier on the big cod, all solid bone, almost impossible to digest. So what they were doing, they were eating them up as far as the head, and that was it.
You mean the seal was eating?
The seal was. And I remember the head scientist looking at me, he came and talked to me after, he said, have you really seen this? And I said, I will bring you some pictures of it. And after that, it seemed the next year that their outlook changed and they realized what they were missing, that they were destroying a lot more than just a few small fish. And this is where things started to go. And then we seen every stock go the same way, just start to totally disappear. And today we have nothing left. It's terrible.
My question, I'm not sure who can answer it because I want to get to Mr. Leclerc, is the current vessel capability and capacity adequate to effectively harvest seals? Because we keep talking about expanding markets until we actually have an effective harvest of existing quotas and then to effectively grow that. Is the fleet have the capacity, or does government have to invest in the infrastructure to effectively harvest and efficiently harvest seals, both from catching capacity as well as on the shore? Because the comment I make is if the animal is not properly harvested and get back, nobody can process it into any product. Am I correct in that assumption, Mr. Arsenault?
Yes, you were certainly correct, yes.
So then, again, Chair, I got about a minute left, all right?
Just over a minute.
Okay. To Mr. Leclerc, as well as Mr. Arsenault, what will the face be of the East Coast fishery if governments do not enact policy that does effectively manage the East Coast seal population? Begin, Kenny, if you want, and then finish with Danny.
Yeah, I like to compare it to the issue to farming as on land. If you drive by a country road and you see farmland full of vegetables, and the next day you drive by and they're full of seals eating all the vegetables, the farmers will be yelling at their MPs to get action, and action, and they'll find a solution how to get rid of all the seals.
I'll let Danny finish up on it. What will the East Coast, which is now, as you pointed out, almost totally dependent on lobster and crab, which is a monofishery, which is dangerous?
All you got to do is look back to when the moratorium was not put on a cod. You seen what happened to the coastal communities in Newfoundland? The very exact same thing is going to happen here because this is what we depend on. And these are our last stocks left. There's nothing left besides that. And the Atlantic way of life of coastal communities is going to be gone.
Thank you.
Your time has gone a few seconds over. We'll now go to Monsieur Champoux for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses for their opening statements. Very interesting and instructive. As a first question, I'd like to ask Mr. Hardy. You talked about line fishing. My colleagues are very familiar with this type. We had issues with licensing earlier, and one of my colleagues took this matter to heart. You said their inaction is going to hurt us. Do you have the impression that that's the position of the DFO right now? Do you have the impression that the department is in an action mode, or do you think, do you feel that it's going to take any concrete action whatsoever?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. I can only go by what I see locally. I cannot say what's the mindset in Ottawa, but locally, from the scientists that have been involved with the fishing industry and in particular with seals, the mindset is that seals, I can give you press release after press release, that seals have no impact on any fishery in Newfoundland and I would say Atlantic Canada. There are exceptions, as Mr. Viscato indicated. I mean, there's a Doug Swain DFO, which came out in 2019, I believe it was, and said that the cod fishery would be destroyed by the gray seal, even without commercial fishing. There's a similar report with yellowtail flounder, I believe. This week in Newfoundland, we've had issues with ice. And I watched the evening news last night and I saw a DFO scientist on television stating that marine mammals were in trouble and that pup seals were dying because of poor ice. This is simply not factual. If you have millions of pups and you see 10 around Newfoundland that are dead, that's an anomaly. That's not bad ice. So, sir, I tell you, I have not seen a change in mindset. I could give you details privately of my own conversations with DFO scientists, and they in no way are accepting that seals have a problem with our fishery.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Vescoto, if I may, I would like to talk to you about the moratorium. Earlier, we were listening to Mr. Arsenault's opening statement, and I believe he testified on this personal situation that is experienced by many Quebec fishermen and very many coastal communities as well. This moratorium, which prevents Quebecers from fishing, is it still justified? And if there's no concrete solution that is put forward with respect to these pinnipeds and its impact on the biomass, how do you see this? If we don't sound the alarm strongly, what do you think was going to happen?
Thank you very much for the question. And it is an excellent question because it forces us to stand and look forward and say, okay, if we have a seal herd that's existing at this current population level, and we're not going to take any proactive action to try and dial it down, then I don't think it's reasonable for us to expect many of these fish stocks to actually rebuild to these levels that we might have seen in 1960 or 1970 or the early 1980s. It's just downright impossible. So at that point, if there's going to be an acceptance that we are, as a government or as a country, not going to reduce these herds in any way, shape, or form, then we should not be calling these stocks as depleted. They're as big as they're going to get, with as many of them and the ecosystem effects of the pinniped populations that are pushing down on them like their thumb. I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Yes. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Arsenault a question. You ran out of time to talk to us. I believe I have 1.5 minutes left in my question period. Did you want to talk about your experience over the past 50 years? And to what extent is the current situation desperate for fishermen? Is it possible to turn this around? Could you please explain?
Yes, what I was getting at was that whenever, like I said, moratorium was in place, and at first everyone thought it was going to work. When we seen it didn't work, and we were trying to figure out what it was, when DFO couldn't really come up with an answer, and the fishermen seeing what we were seeing and the way things were going, we realized it. What DFO missed, I think, was that at the time there was a certain quota set on the fish. Every time the fish, they would do a survey, and they would cut the quota, which was understandable. But as they kept cutting that quota, it was cut to the fishermen. They never took to realize there was two groups fishing, and the fishermen were taken off the water, and yet the stock went down. Well, what's wrong? And then they come up to stall more, was what I mentioned a while ago about the large cod. They're not eating the large cod. Well, we proved that to them. And one guy mentioned Doug Swain a while ago, head scientist in Moncton. He is the one that sat down with us and he said, hey, you guys hit the nail on the head here. And he was working and, try to do something to help us. But I think if we don't do it, it's too late if we don't get it done now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shampoo. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses who are here. So first, I wanted to actually thank Mr. Hardy for sending the videos that you did. I enjoyed them while eating my dinner the other night, and they were very informative, so thank you for that. I do want to make clear, and I know everybody around, not everybody around, the members around the table have heard me say it a million times, but I just want to reiterate, I am very much in support of a sustainable seal harvest. And my family itself, we were talking about the cod moratorium, we moved from the East Coast to the West after the cod moratorium because of the impacts on the community there. I recently visited Nunavut, and we're speaking with Indigenous people and fishing communities there about the importance of a sustainable seal harvest. There's, we know that there's no denying that we need to be taking actions, timely actions around this soon. And I wanted to actually see if I could play a little bit of devil's advocate here, Mr. Hardy. I think it's always good when we call out things that we're seeing and getting other thoughts on it. In the media today, I was reading, and I'll quote, that seal diets vary according to seasons, ages, sexes, and among areas and years. And in context, this was speaking to the complexity of the issue of seal predation and its impacts on cod. I'm wondering if you can speak to this quote and provide some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with the statement. Seals will eat anything in the ocean. And depending on seasonality, meaning when certain species are available, they will consume that species. Depending on the numbers of seals, the impact on the particular population can be significant. If I refer to DFO Science and their stomach sampling program that was in Newfoundland and Labrador for at least 25 years, they use the same sealers in the same communities at the same time of year. Now, what makes that interesting is that the stomach sampling was done in the winter months from inshore vessels. So they went up Newfoundland, up the northeast coast to Newfoundland and places like the sea, and they collected stomach samples. And when they looked in those seal stomachs, harp seals predominantly, they didn't find a lot of capelin and they didn't find a lot of cod. Now, why was it that they didn't find a lot of capelin or cod during that time of the year? Because they simply weren't there. And I will use an analogy that was used with the Atlantic Seal Science Task Team, which Mr. Viscato was part of. If we were to sample a black bear's stomach in the spring of the year after they came out of hibernation, would we find blueberries in their stomach? No. The same is true for a large part of the seal stomach samples that have been done in Newfoundland.
So thank you for that information. I guess based on that then, would you, I guess I'm trying to understand then what's the best way forward? If we know that there's seasonal differences, there's age differences, there's regional differences, how would this look moving forward for us to look at implementing a sustainable seal harvest on the East Coast specifically?
Yeah, I mean, a year or so ago, I spoke to some of you guys, parliamentarians, with another group. We talked to 50 MPs across Canada, and practically all were 100% supportive in our message. But we have an existing quota, and our quota is, 460,000 animals for harps. This year, the ask is for 25,000 animals. That's the ask. So we have a long ways to go before we can go to DFO and say, give us more quota. So we need to be able to utilize the resource in a sustainable manner, as you're suggesting, and we need to be able to do some good, not only for everyone in Atlantic Canada and Western Canada, BC, we need to be able to do it for other people in the world. There is a shortage of food, and seal is very nutritious.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. I think this is going to, I only have time for one last question, but I think, could you share a little bit more about how you feel that the observations of fishers out on the water could be better utilized to provide the information that we need and complement the information that you were talking about that was being received by DFO that was lacking? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, well, you have two fishers here today, Mr. Leclerc and the other gentleman there from PEI. And, I think any science would value their input. These gentlemen have a lifetime of experience. They're on the water every day. So what they see is important. And I think that they've been ignored far too long. And just to give you an example, there was a Capeland meeting yesterday in Gander. And I spoke to a fisherman. And he said, meetings are not like they used to be. You can't have a discussion. You're not allowed to go outside the bounds of the particular meeting. So, we have to get beyond that. In Newfoundland, time and time again, whether it's Capeland, herring, crab, or any other species, when fishermen bring up seals, there is a threat to close down the meeting. Thank you again.
We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My mic is working again.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, witnesses. Mr. Hardy, I understand that the Fisheries Resource Conservation Council was established in 1993, put out a report in 1994 calling for a significant reduction in all seal populations. And in response to that report and more work by DFO, then DFO Minister Brian Tobin, who some of you may remember, in 1995, his conclusion was, and he said, I quote, there is only one major player still fishing cod. His first name is Harp, and his second name is Seal. Then again, in 1999, I believe, the FRCC recommended DFO reduce seal herds by up to 50%, and those herds, of course, were a lot smaller than they are today. And believe it or not, in 2002, there was a seal forum in Newfoundland. Sound familiar? With a lot of discussion about this issue. Northern Cod FOPO study in 2005. The list goes on and on and on of studies. In that FOPO study, it said that cod represents, if it only represents 1% of the seal's diet, this would amount to 60 tons of cod disappearing a year. And you referred earlier to Dr. Swain in 2019 with that report. He said, at the current abundance of gray seals in the ecosystem, recovery of the cod population does not appear possible, and its extinction is highly probable. Now, we had a seal summit again. It was just happened again in the fall in Newfoundland, and I had the honor to be there. And there was a big revelation before that Minister Murray said that seals eat fish. Apparently that was new. And the big headline coming out of that report was that the minister pledged that we need to do more research on seals to figure out what's going on with fishery. So I'll ask you, Mr. Hardy, do we need to do more science to find out what's happening to our fishery because of seals?
Two-letter answer, no.
You, Mr. Viscato, do you believe the same thing?
I would say that we're in a position where there's a lot of information that's out there. Whether it's being interpreted or collected in balance is another question. I would say that we have enough in hand to make some significant actions on the seal populations.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Viscato, there used to be, I'm not sure if it's still up, a slide on the DFO website that showed some seal summit sample results. And it found that in their winter sampling of gray seals, they found that 47% of the content of the stomach was Atlantic mackerel. And in the summer, the content, surprisingly, was almost 60% Atlantic herring and Atlantic cod, to, I think, Mr. Hardy's point about when you hunt them. So at that level, is that not a level far greater than the spawning biomass that exists for those stocks? Is that not the reason why they're declining?
Well, there's a good chance. I mean, if you look at and you just take something like the gray seal population on the Scotian Shelf and figure out, okay, how much fish would they have to eat to survive? And then you look at DFO's own research vessel survey, you come out to about 50% of the total fish biomass observed in the survey would be potentially consumed by the gray seal herd. If you go up to the Newfoundland region for harp seals, you're at about 25%. So it is quite clear that the consumptive potential of those pinnipeds is quite dramatic and can impact those systems quite substantively.
So in other words, if we harvest every pelagic fish commercially that exists, the big biomass now, but we don't harvest the one major predator in the ocean, what happens to the system?
It gets put into a pit and it can't get its way out of it.
Mr. Hardy, one more question. I was reading an old article from 2020 from The Guardian, you know, the big newspaper in London, in England. And it reports on, the headline is, U.S. allows killing of hundreds of sea lions to save the struggling salmon. And it goes on to talk about how Washington State and Oregon State had approved the killing of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sea lions to try and have the salmon and trout recover. I'm wondering if you know anything about that or could comment and verify that that's going on?
Yes, I do know a little bit about it. It went through the U.S. legislature and was voted on and passed. So, yes, they did, because of the problem that was identified, primarily with sea lions, I believe. Then they did allow for the killing of sea lions in that area. This is true of the U.S. East Coast as well, and there's a lot of information available on the gray seals. And some of the commentary down there is, well, if you take care of the population, it will only be replaced by Canadian gray seals, which are in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Your time has gone a little bit over. We'll now finish up this first hour with Mr. Cormier for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hardy, I'll start with you and I'll go in English because what I'm going to read to you is in English. So last week we had some DFO official at the committee, and one of the officials said this: as a resource manager, our objective is to keep the seal population healthy. Our objective is not to reduce the seal population. Just like other fishery, where we try to keep our fish at a very high and heavy level, our objective for seal is to keep blah, 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 and I cut her off. What do you think of that statement?
I think it's ridiculous. The seal population, how healthy does the seal population have to be? You're at record levels with gray seals in the maritime provinces. The harp seal population last census was 7.6 million animals. You know, the Baltic states have released a report this past fall where multiple countries signed on that there is an issue with their fishery because of gray seals. Mm-hmm. Their population is less than 80,000 animals.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, thank you for that. Just because of the time. And just another question, because you talked, thanks for clarifying that. But just because you talked about Capeland, and it's an impact on Capeland, as you said, what about mackerel? The seal eat mackerel in big portion, if I can say.
Yes, it's my understanding that they do, and actually I have some data that was sent to me while I was on vacation last week, and some of the limited stomach sampling that was done in the winter months, I'm assuming it was done off Nova Scotia, showed that the contents in the gray seal stomach was up to 47% Atlantic mackerel.
Okay, and just because you talked about market, and we've talked about market a little bit, like, look, we all know that, what we're going to do with seal can have an impact on our market. You know that we export crab, lobster a lot to U.S. and, other European country. But how we can strike a balance of, having a seal, reducing the seal population, but at the same time making sure that we're going to keep our market alive, because I think that will be very devastating if we go ahead with a seal hunt or whatsoever, another country will just shut our market down. So how do we strike that balance?
I think it's an education program as well as it is a marketing program. And we need to reach out to the countries we're currently doing trade with, and not only fish products, but all products, and educate them what happened to the great fishery we had in Atlantic Canada. We were the provider of food for the world, and we're no longer that provider. And then we also have to form alliances with all the groups throughout the world that have problems with seals, and we need to communicate with them. And if you have time,
Sure, go ahead, very quick, yeah.
We're just talking about utilizing seals for the good of people and for food.
Yeah.
We have a country in the world right now. I can't even go there.
No, thank you, Mr. Hardy. I understand. Look, I'm the son of...
I'm going to say Russia. And they're killing people every day. And there's no reason why anyone in Canada should be afraid to kill a seal and sell their products to the world. Sorry.
No, thank you, Mr. Hardy. Look, I'm the son of a fisherman. I saw my dad, fish all his life, and I can see seal in front of my house right now that I've never seen before. So I think we all know that there's a problem and that we have to do something. So thank you for that. Very quickly, Mr. Vascaro, you said earlier that que le phoque, vous aviez des données.
You had data showing that the seals were eating both crabs and lobsters. At the last meeting, we were told that this wasn't the case and that there's very little data to support that. Do you have data that you can share with us? Because you did allude to this in your opening statement.
So it really comes down to what species of seal that you're talking about. So if I believe that they're called the bearded seal is very much a heavy crab-eating seal that you get up off the northwest coast of Newfoundland. When it comes to lobster consumption, there's a lot of, I would say, you look over at Danny in the room there, and he'll be able to tell you that they're seeing examples of that. Once again, this comes down to what Bob was talking about when it comes to making sure that your data collection overlaps with the ability to see it, because if you don't get a chance to see it, then everybody talks it. That never happens. But there's a lot of pictures being taken by seal harvesters, pictures being taken by fish harvesters, evidence appearing on the shores that says this is happening. So once again, it's a species specific, space specific, and time specific.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cormier. That expires your time and expires, of course, our first hour of testimony. I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Vascato, Mr. Leclerc, Mr. Arsenault, and, of course, a constituent of mine, Mr. Bob Hardy, and for sharing your knowledge with the committee today. And it's been an absolutely pleasure to hear from you.
I just want to comment that I think Mr. Arsenault is the snappiest dresser here with that leaf shirt.
On division.
No, and we have to let our witnesses go. We're going to chew up time in the second hour.
Okay.
Very, very quickly, Mr. Chair. It had been convention in the committee that we would notify the witnesses if they had further information to provide. They could provide it in writing, and it would be as valuable to us. So if we could start doing that again with our witnesses, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I think the witnesses have heard that now loud and clear, and if there's anything they want to add for today's meeting and offering that they have of information, we'll certainly allow them to send it in writing, please. So we'll suspend for a moment while we transfer out of one group into another. Again, thank you, everyone. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of the new witnesses. Please wait until I recognise you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Finally, a reminder that the use of House-approved headset is mandatory for all virtual participants in parliamentary proceedings. I would now like to welcome our witnesses.
Chair, could I just get a quick point of order? I'm sorry. I'm going to speak very quickly because I don't want to take time from the already limited time that we have. I wanted to see if you could provide some clarification around the manner in which the time is going to be split in the next round. Unfortunately, the way that it was split up the last round, myself and the member from the block both lost time, and wanted to clarify what our time allocations will be in this round.
The time allocations will start as soon as the witnesses make their opening statements. We got till 6 o'clock. When we get to 6 o'clock, we're done, wherever we're to.
Can I ask a request, Chair, that we distribute the timing accordingly to the time that we have so that it's fairly distributed?
You'd probably have to get that cleared to the individual party whips. They're the ones that came up with how the schedules advance through committee, whether it's a 6-minute round, 5-minute round, more 5 minutes and 2.5 minutes. That was not incorporated by the committee itself. That was done by the whips when they looked at the structure of the actual committees.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to take up too much time because I don't want to lose my time debating this, of course, but I do know that other committees do redistribute so that that time is still fairly allocated.
You can ask for unanimous consent to the committee to do that if
so
you want.
Perhaps I can ask for consensus of the committee that we fairly distribute the time so that all members have access to the time that should be allocated to ask questions.
Yes or no? I can divide it out pretty easily. Okay. All right.
Thank you very
We'll try
much.
and do that as we go through. I'll see after the statements how much time is left, and if I can allocate like 5 minutes to everybody to get to the end, that's what I'll do instead of 6. Okay. Thank you for that. So as I was getting to, I'd now like to welcome the witnesses as an individual. Dr. Trite, Professor, University of British Columbia by video conference, representing Explorer. We have Sandra Gauthier, Executive Director by video conference, and representing the Pacific Balance Pinniped Society here in person, we have Mr. Ken Pierce, President, and Matt Stabler, Director. Thank you for taking the time to appear today. You each have 5 minutes for opening statements, and I'll start off with Ms. Gauthier first, please, for 5 minutes or less. Turn on your mic. No, it's not on. The clerk will try and get that worked out. I'll go to Dr. Trites first, please, and see how we can do this. Yeah, there you go. 5 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andrew Trites. I am a professor in the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries at the University of British Columbia and director of the Marine Mammal Research Unit. I've been studying increasing and decreasing populations of marine mammals for over 40 years and have specialized in studying seals, sea lions, and fur seals. My research encompasses field studies, laboratory work, and computer-based studies, many of which have been done in collaboration with research scientists in universities and government in Canada and the United States. I've also served and continue to serve on a number of advisory committees, including the Marine Mammal Specialist Group for COSEWIC, the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada. As such, I am acutely aware of the threats and conservation challenges facing pinnipeds in Canada, as well as the challenges that pinnipeds pose to fisheries. Regarding pinniped management and ecosystem impacts, I'd like to bring 3 points of discussion to your attention. The first concerns the commonly held belief that many people have that pinnipeds are out of control, the numbers are exploding, and there is an overpopulation. Your committee has been asked, for example, to examine the ecosystem impacts of pinniped overpopulation, rather than to simply examine the ecosystem impacts of pinnipeds, full stop. To the best of my knowledge, all such statements of overpopulation appear to be based on a baseline of unnaturally low historic population sizes in the 1960s and 1970s, when it was unusual, at least in British Columbia, to ever see a pinniped because they had been culled and hunted to unprecedented low numbers. In British Columbia, for example, all population of pinnipeds have recovered or are in the process of recovering from overexploitation. There is no overpopulation of pinnipeds. Harbor seals have been stable and at carrying capacity for over 25 years at about 100,000 animals. The next stable population are the adult male California sea lions that have numbered about 14,000 since the late 2010s, and which originate from breeding colonies in California that stabilized 10 years earlier. Next in line in the stabilization process are the Steller sea lions, which are listed as special concern in Canada and appear to be quickly approaching their carrying capacity of about 45,000 animals. Adding these three numbers up yields a total of 159,000 pinnipeds, which is a far cry from the 2.5 million people that live in the Greater Vancouver Regional District. The bottom line is that there's not an overpopulation of pinnipeds in BC. Pinniped populations are balanced and are being maintained at natural levels through natural ecosystem processes that do not cost a penny of taxpayers' money. The second point I'd like to briefly reflect on with you is the perception that predation by pinnipeds is bad and harmful to species and ecosystem. This biased view probably reflects the beliefs of many that seals are like humans in the desire to only eat perfectly looking foods, when in reality, a predator such as a seal has a much better chance of catching slow, diseased, and inferior fish, which ultimately makes fish populations healthier. Similarly, predation by seals also brings indirect benefits to ecosystems. For example, seals that consume predatory fish such as large hake that eat young herring can increase the abundance of juvenile herring available for salmon to eat. And finally, there is increasing evidence coming from terrestrial ecology that reintroducing top predators to their former habitats benefits ecosystem stability, productivity, and biodiversity. Such a rewilding phenomenon appears to be naturally occurring in Canada's marine ecosystems as our oceans are being rewilded by seals, sea lions, whales, and sharks. Thus, the benefits of pinnipeds to ecosystem health appear to outweigh the perceived harm. The final discussion point I'd like to make concerns the confidence that different people have in stating the predictions made by mathematical predator-prey models, such as a model that predicts that removing half of all the pinnipeds in British Columbia will restore West Coast salmon. What you may not know is that the chance of the model being right is only 30 to 40%, and it would likely take about 10 to 20 years to determine if things would actually go according to plan. Now, to some people, 30 to 40% odds are great because of the amount of money that stands to be made if people can catch more salmon. However, those who put greater value on the life of a seal want more than 80% assurance of models being right before endorsing such predictions. It's therefore important to know and to ask about the level of confidence that underlies model predictions. It's also important to recognize that societal views and values have changed significantly since the 1970s, when pinniped numbers were at their lowest in recorded history. In conclusion, I don't know of a single case where culling of pinnipeds has had the intended effect. I would therefore like to encourage you to consider first, whether a population of pinnipeds that is stable and at carrying capacity can be deemed to be an overpopulation. Second, whether the benefits that pinnipeds bring to marine ecosystems far outweighs the harm they're perceived to do. And third, whether the low probability that culling pinnipeds would actually increase the abundance of commercial and sport fish is worth the risk of failure and causing greater harm to ecosystem health and the well-being of other highly valued species such as killer whales and sharks. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you. We'll now go to Ms. Gauthier again from the representing Explorer.
Bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Perfect.
Can you hear me? Yes. Good. Thank you very much. I'm here to talk about the sustainable marketing of sail in 2009 here at the Museum Explorer, which is an oceanographic museum in the Gulf. The management of fisheries is called Poisson Bleu. In 2009, our objective was to really show the value of unknown species in the St. Lawrence that are being underutilized. We today now certify more than 200 restaurants throughout Quebec and a chain of supermarkets called Metro, giving the biomass the gray seal as well as the harbor seal are on the list of sustainable animals. And since 2009, we have seen in Quebec a growth, continuing growth, and more substantial growth in the demand for seal meat. Today, the only processor, the only butcher that we have in Quebec that deals with seal processing is located in the Magdalen Islands, and this person can't meet the demand. Metro wants to put seal on its counters, and right now the only processor in Quebec isn't able to meet the demand of this grocery store. And then there's also the whole transportation issue as well. Considering the huge number of seals that we have in our water, I think that sustainable management in the St. Lawrence is something that we should explore. We want to really explore the commercialization of this food source and increase the number of commercial licenses in Quebec, such as in Gaspé and on the North Shore. There, we have gray seals. And there are more. We want to extend the seal hunt to have access to greater numbers of seals, because the whole issue of the ice makes it impossible for us to reach our fishing quotas. So we would like to be able to look at starting up 2 processing plants so that we'll be able to really exploit this species, because the demand in Quebec is there. Over the past 2 years, New Brunswick has come to us to look at our expertise because they're very interested in what we're doing. I know that I have only a minute remaining, but I'd like to explain that the Scientific Museum Explorement organizes a training session for the staff in order to promote the seal, the use of seal. And this training over 2 years, we talk about biology, we talk about legislation, we give workshops, charcuterie workshops, and the weekend is closed by food testing done by Quebec chefs. And this workshop has a waiting list of 300 people right now, and we can only give this session right now to 30 people. So it's proven that we do have a demand for sustainable hunt, and what we're hoping to see is that we get licenses be extended from right now the season is from November to December, so we need to extend this period, and we even want to enable other Quebecers. Right now, it's only the people who live on the coast who have sealing rights, but we want to have a greater number of Quebecers be able to get this license and receive training. This is what we're doing for other animals. And considering the biomass that we have here in Quebec and what we can do with this, and we can do this ethically, we hope to promote it. There.
We'll now go to the gentleman in the room, Mr. Stebler or Mr. Pierce. You have 5 minutes. Either you're one person or you can share it with each other.
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that mic on?
Yeah, yes, it's on.
Good. Thank you very much for inviting us here. It's been a long wait to get before people that understand our problems mutually on East Coast. So I'm just going to give a brief outline of what we've done here, and Matt will follow up. So I'm going to start off the risk of not dealing with pinnipeds versus what Dr. Treitz came on with. Number one is the loss of salmon stocks. The collapse of our salmon stocks means the collapse of our coastal ecosystem. Whales, eagles, pinnipeds, seabirds, bears, diving ducks, otters, and a host of others depend on salmon for their subsistence. No spawners means a dead river, as the spawned-out salmon are vital in providing fertilizer to the system, which feeds the aquatic plants, which feeds the food that the young fry, trout, and steelhead depend on for food. 2, the collapse of our 1 billion plus sports and fishing industry. 3, the collapse of what little remains of our commercial fisheries done by Indigenous and non-Indigenous fishers. And 4, which I think you're all sensitive to, a very real threat to Section 35. But what is Pacific Balanced Pinniped Society? It's a group dedicated to bringing the pinniped population on our BC coast back into historical balance through a controlled, well-managed harvest over time. Our group includes the following: 115 First Nations, UFAWU, Unifor, BC Wildlife Federation, many of the other local sports fishing clubs. This group represents well over 700,000 supporters. Also of note, thanks to Clifford Small and Rick Perkins, and 152 members, MPs that voted for support of Bill C-251, I think it would be fair to say that this represents well over 15 million Canadians in support. The science. I will give bullet points on this science supporting a harvest and will back up with written support as requested. Number one, 40 to 50% of outbound Chinook smolts consumed in the Salish Sea as they emerge from the rivers. 60% of coho and steelhead smolts suffer the same fate. 350,000 metric tons of finfish are consumed annually by BC pinnipeds. To put that into perspective, that equates to approximately 7,000 fully loaded seine boats. 135,000 metric tons of the above consumption are Pacific herring. That equates to approximately 2,700 fully loaded seine boats. This year's allowable total harvest for the Gulf of Georgia for the seines was 2,600 tons, equal to approximately 52 loaded seine boats. 1.5 to 2 million returning adult Fraser sockeye are consumed at the north end of Vancouver Island by sea lions alone as they school up for their journey down the Johnstone Straits. Economic loss at $10 per fish is $15 million. Studies on the Columbia show that the sea lion consumes 3 to 5 returning adult Chinook per lion per day. At 10,000 lions, that equates...
Lower your paper, Mr. Pierce. You're blocking your mic.
My apologies. That equates to approximately 30,000 Chinook per day consumed by the sea lions in the Columbia. Populations of harbor seals in the Gulf of Georgia around 48,000. If they consume 1 mature salmon per week, that equates to 192,000 per month times 5 months, which is 960,000. That's just over 5 months. Okay, the USA rescinded the Marine Mammals Protection Act on the Columbia, and to date, through a trapping system, they have culled over 9,000 sea lions in the last 3 years. We have the drawings for those traps if anybody would be interested. Our 52-page IFMP, our Integrated Fisheries Management Program, has been before DFO for 5 years now. The Washington State Fish and Wildlife commissioned Washington State Academy of Science to further study the pinniped problem in Washington State and offer solutions. Their top scientist, who is equated with Dr. Walters, stated the key thing that was not just recommended anymore, did not just recommending any more studies, but instead recognizing that studies won't prove anything, and only a large-scale harvesting experiment will provide the needed understanding. This is the first time that a major science group has had the courage to admit that the standard more studies approach does not work. Thank you, and on to Matt.
I'm sorry, your time has gone over, so you'll have to provide any other testimony in written form. It's actually gone over by 50 seconds, so it's Unfortunate, but we have to get to the rounds of questioning. We'll start off our questioning, of course, with Mr. Arnold. Now, they wanted it divided out equally, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I did 4 sevens, it'd get us to the point. So do you want to go 4 fours and 4 threes? 2 rounds. Okay, 4 minutes to Mr. Arnold or less, please. And I'll be firm on the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for being here. I want to start out, the Balanced Pinniped Society, have you determined if there's a market for the product?
Take that.
Yes. In fact, we've done very serious investigations into that. We have determined that we have markets for hides, we have markets for the meat, we have markets for the omega-3 fatty acids. The only one that we have left to deal with is the bones. Those markets exist far away and beyond for any harvest size that we propose.
Thank you. And what is the biggest impediment to developing those markets?
The biggest impediment to those markets is DFO. They have had our IFMP in front of them for 5.5 years, and they come up with nonsensical roadblocks repeatedly, over and over. It is a fear of the public that they are doing this. None of their impediments are based on science.
Thank you. Could you elaborate a little further on the Washington and Oregon actions down there? I don't think you got a chance to in the opening remarks.
With the chair's permission, I got 30, 40 seconds, and I would like to do my presentation. Can I have leave to do that? Okay.
It's up to Mr. Arnold.
My name is Matt Stabler. I'm a retired fisheries biologist with considerable experience and now a recently forced out retired commercial salmon trawler in BC. From my direct experience on the ground in both occupations and from published data, it is impossible to have any other determination than one which notes our West Coast salmon are in extremely serious trouble right now. The vast majority of their populations are depressed and growing rapidly more so each and every year. While there are a myriad of issues causing this habitat, such as habitat loss, global warming, there's others. The most pressing at this point in time, and the only one that we can act upon immediately, is the depredation by seals and sea lions. Current peer-reviewed and proven studies note that between 40 to 60% of outgoing coho and Chinook salmon smolts from the Fraser and the vast majority of BC's coastal freshwater systems are consumed annually by these predators. Furthering the reduction of their numbers is the fact that these pinnipeds also target all salmon species while they are at sea and upon their return to their natal waters to spawn. This is entirely unsustainable. If left unchecked, we will soon be bearing witness to the extirpation of salmon species overall in our West Coast waters. The science is in, folks. The science is conclusive. Calling for more studies in this regard, while the salmon populations plummet as they are, is basically a fool's errand. The time to act was yesterday. If we want our future generations to have access to both salmon and many other fisheries, such as herring, etc., we must act immediately upon the one bottleneck we can to help these resources avoid extinction. And that will provide us with the time required to address the other bottlenecks these resources face. Should we not act today, the responsibility for the demise of these very precious resources is on us.
Thank you, Mr. Stabler. Pardon me?
25 seconds.
Yeah. What will be, you've described some of the impacts. What would be the impacts on communities and others, individuals like yourselves, in the long term if we don't act now?
What we are bearing witness today is the collapse of salmon and herring and other industries. You cannot overestimate what that means to coastal communities. My fleet was 400 boats strong when I started. Today we have 30 active commercial trawlers. What has that done to the communities that they live in? It has destroyed them, sir.
Thank you. Go to Mr. Hardy for 4 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Mr. Stabler, I was on the boats out of Prince Rupert back in the early 70s, and, the fishing community was pretty strong back then. And, Ken, I've enjoyed receiving your emails over time. I don't know if you've cut me off or not. I haven't seen that many lately. Have you gone quiet on us?
You're right back on.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. So, listen. Professor Trites, you're swimming against the stream here, it would appear, with your comments. And I wanted to ask, do we have a seal problem, or do we simply have problem seals? Because that seems to be where Washington State actually focused its effort.
There certainly are problem seals. And where Washington State is focused is at the dams and up in the rivers. And so while the sea lines there did not create the problems, they are benefiting from having dammed the rivers that are preventing salmon to get up and to spawn. And so they're very targeted removals. What's being proposed in British Columbia is not targeted removals of problem animals. It's to remove half of all the population. And doing so will have an immediate consequence on transient killer whales.
Right.
And,
I do have to
sure.
interrupt here. I'm sorry, because I do have limited time. I've heard it said that the positioning of log booms is a problem, especially on the Fraser River.
Log booms is perhaps not the biggest problem in the Fraser River, but log booms have provided artificial habitat in areas where animals can rest and breed. And get more access. There is efforts to remove log booms and recover some of the estuaries, but certainly log booms have been one of the factors that have made it easier for seals to access salmon.
We heard cryptic testimony from Norway that their seal problem just went away. Do you know anything more about what happened over there?
I don't know the particulars.
No, I'm sorry. That was a question for Mr. Pierce.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
We had heard that very cryptic evidence from Norway that their seal problem just went away. That's exactly what he said. Do you know what happened over there?
I'd phrase it a little more politely, that they've been properly dealt with.
Okay. All right. Yes, Mr. Stabler.
They effectively dealt them by harvesting them very aggressively. I have a buddy of mine that lives there, and he spearheaded one of the fleets that engaged in that process. I can confirm that that's what went down.
Did Norway suffer trade relations with anybody on account of this?
Absolutely not. I would like to point out to the fact that Ken alluded to, the U.S. Revised and pulled the teeth out of the Marine Mammal Act such that they could reduce the number of sea lions in their waters. And contrary to what Dr. Trites is telling you, they aren't just problematic ones when you're talking 9,000 plus animals in a year and a half.
All right, thank you. Good.
To Mr. Champeau for 4 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the witnesses for your opening statements. I have a question for Ms. Gauthier. We've heard from the fishermen, and you have a very interesting role to play in this process because you're there to educate, to come up with a new perspective to the whole issue. So the image of seal hunting has been given a rough ride over the years, but since you've opened Explore Mer and you're providing training on seal hunting, Ms. Gauthier, have you seen any difference in the way that people perceive this hunt? Absolutely. Over the years, when we began in the first year, when we provided this training here in the at the museum, we got death threats, but today we're doing even more promotion on this, and we no longer see this contempt on social media. Not only are people throughout Quebec raising their hand to join in the hunt, unfortunately they can't get access to the training or the license, but people in New Brunswick are following what we're doing very closely. We want to enable people to hunt for personal reasons, but also that could lead to some very interesting economic development for people who live in the coastal regions of Quebec, particularly when the tourist season is dead. We'd like to be able to develop a tourist industry. We would like to see guides that could people take out for a seal hunt and be able to taste the meat. In your opening statement, you said that the processing plant in the Magdalen Islands is not sufficient, and they can't really provide grocery stores like Metro with the needed product. There's a quota on the seal hunt and the international acceptability. Do you think that we're able to do this in Quebec? Before, you said that we are missing at least 2 more processing plants, so we need more, and perhaps we have to extend the hunting period. We have to ensure that Quebecers are interested in eating seal meat. You're doing this work to make people aware of the various products that result from the seal hunt. But if we do this locally in Quebec, do you think that we could resolve the problem and have better relationships internationally? Initially, I don't think we're able to meet the Quebec demand. So first of all, we have to meet our local demand. That will help us with sustainable development and food sovereignty. And once we are able to meet our demands, we could then focus on international markets. But right now, this is not the situation. Right now, we can't meet our demand in Quebec. We've been working since 2009 on highlighting the value of this stock. We want to show this seal meat as being a high-caliber product. I'm sorry, I only have 10 seconds remaining. And what part of the seal do you prefer? You have to provide me with the recipe for this.
Baron, for 4 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses, in particular the witnesses here from beautiful Vancouver Island. Welcome. First, I just want to make clear that I can only speak for myself, of course, but I'm very much in support of sustainable seal harvesting and did not support Bill C-251. So I want to just point out that the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. So I wanted to so back to my question. So I'm looking at a proposal here from 2018. This was quite a while ago now, before I was in this position. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit around what it is that you are proposing that happens around a seal harvest on the West Coast.
First and foremost,
You good?
so it's on. First and foremost, we're starting off in the experimental stage. This isn't a go out and clean out the stocks. Our initial proposition is to take 5,000 seals in the first year, do full analysis, do full market research with them. Simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Can you speak a little bit more in in your opening statement? You had talked about 115 First Nations involvement. Can you speak a little bit around what you're hearing from First Nations who are involved?
Yeah, very definitely. We've got the 3 largest groups on the coast: the Fraser Salmon Council, Ken Malloway, and then we've got Murray Ned with the LFFA. Then, of course, we've got the group on the island as well, and then scattered groups that we haven't included. And they are fully supportive in writing of our IFMP.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask a question to Mr. Stabler around, can you speak a little bit more around the market implications in the U.S. and how us moving forward with a seal harvest may or may not impact our seafood here with the and the relationship with the USA?
That's a really good question, Lisa Marie. I'm happy you asked it. As I noted previously, the U.S. seriously altered their Marine Mammal Protection Act to allow them to cull And I must note, there is a large difference between we are looking at harvest, utilizing maximum product from that animal. They culled 9,000 plus sea lions. They are in no position to sanction any country who does the same and is under a harvest regime, and they will not do it.
Oh, thank you. With my final minute, I wanted to actually give my colleague, Mr. Arnold, an opportunity. Mr. Arnold? I wanted to give Mr. Arnold an opportunity to take 1 minute of my time to ask a question, because I wanted to make sure that Mr. Stabler had the opportunity to do his opening remarks. Yes.
Thank you. I'll ask the, do you feel that DFO's decision-making process can be trusted, when it comes to pinniped management? Yes or no?
You saw my partner's reaction.
No.
No.
Absolute no. Okay, thank you. And what do fishermen see now on the water compared to a couple of decades ago or longer when there was?
I alluded to that previously, from 400 boats to 30. I'm out of the industry now. Why am I retiring? We're going to get 3 weeks, and that's our season. 3 weeks. What we have seen was robust salmon stocks that numbered in incredible numbers. And then we saw the wave of Californians move in under blanket marine mammal protection, and the increase of our local stellars and the increase of the local harp seals. Our quota went to nothing. We catch nothing at this point in time. The why? They are being eaten on the way out of the river. They're being eaten on the way back to the river. The resource is in serious, serious trouble. We don't do anything about it. They're gone.
It's all over.
Mr. Arnold, we'll now go to Mr. Small for 3 minutes or less, please. I understand you were intending to share your time with Mr. Bragdon. I'll leave that up to you. Mr. Bragdon don't want your time now, according to his finger he's waving at you. So you, 3 minutes or less, please.
Starting now. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mr. Pierce or Mr. Stabler, what are the results of actions to reduce sea lions on the Columbia River? Have they seen increases in their salmon populations?
Very specifically at the Willamette Fall, 2 years ago when they first started this program, they were watching the winter steelhead population come through, and that was at 250 pieces that came through, and last year they had 2,800.
Good. Okay. We've heard testimony in previous hearings that if we harvest pinnipeds, silver hake population is going to skyrocket, and this is going to harm salmon populations. It's going to be devastating. Is there commercial fishery for silver hake in BC waters?
I had the pleasure of visiting one of the largest processors on Vancouver Island when we were doing market research. And one of the boats had just come in fishing off Cape Lazo for hake. And last May, they had a delivery to that date of 12 million pounds. So you can adjust that level to anything to offset what Dr. Treitz was worrying about. It's easily managed.
So if we reduce pinnipeds, silver hake population increases, more silver hake for harvesters to catch.
Yes.
To help replace
Yeah.
the
It
salmon
balances it
that,
out.
yeah? Okay. There's a lot of controversy over net pen salmon farming in British Columbia. If we took every net pen salmon farm out of the water today and left all the pinnipeds in the water, would it make any difference in the recovery of wild salmon stocks, Mr. Stabler? You're a biologist.
It would make absolutely zero difference. There are issues with fish farms. They're a small footprint. An overburdening, a huge supply of pinnipeds, that's not a small footprint. That's not a localized event. That is coast-wide. The fish farms are negligible compared to what is going on with depredation.
So the number one thing we have to do to help save wild salmon stocks in British Columbia is what?
You've got to get into a harvest control regime of an exploding population. I have a great deal of science that backs up the statements, all of them peer-reviewed, all of them written. I will provide that as expert testimony to this panel. And you folks, you're going to find that a great deal of that science that I will submit to you will directly counter what Mr. Trites has said here today. For that reason and much more, I suggest the committee as a whole, please review those peer-reviewed papers that I am going to send you.
Mr. Hanley, for 3 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone. This has been a really interesting discussion. In view of the short time, I don't have any predetermined position on this. I really want to know what is the best evidence, and how do we resolve some conflicting evidence. Certainly we know, and my riding is the Yukon Territory. We know that salmon is essentially collapsed. The Chinook in particular is collapsed. So I'm very worried about the critical state of our salmon. So there, I think there's no argument, we know also that there's potential for growth in a seal market, as eloquently described by Madame Gauthier, and that there, with education, that can increase. So I guess a few questions. First, quickly to Dr. Trites. Mr. Stabler's referred now twice to peer-reviewed studies about salmon consumption by predators. And can you comment on your own view of the magnitude of this issue and why there's some disagreement perhaps between your assessment and Mr. Stabler's assessment?
Yeah, I think, often we see numbers thrown out in terms of tonnage of fish that marine mammals are eating and making reference to seine boats and whatnot, the equivalents. The reality is that when we look at what people consume, we find that the average American, where they weigh their food, they're consuming on average about 1.6 tons of food per year. And it works out to be about 5.6% of body mass. And compared to pinnipeds, they're taking about 5.3 for seals and 5 for seals and sea lions. So often it comes down to how the numbers are being used. The other point I would like to make on this is that there's a lot of research being done trying to figure out what's wrong with salmon. And a lot of evidence is not finding a connection to the presence of seals other than their numbers are high compared to fish numbers. But there's a recent paper that came out this past year on salmon where they looked at survival trends. I can forward this to the committee, and there's not a connection being demonstrated here with the presence of seals.
Dr. Trites, I have to move because I think my time is running out already. But a question to change the approach, Mr. Stabler or Pierce, do we have the equipment and gear to take on seal harvesting in a major way? And also, how would you measure the impact? Is 5,000 seal harvest enough to be able to see? Will that make a difference? Is it measurable?
You will see a measurable but minute 5,000 out of 150,000, pretty small base. But with 5,000, we can get 100% stomach sampling. We can then go out to the market with the pelts, with the seal oil. One of our members got shut down about 15 years ago, and he was into rendering the seal oil. And there's 2.5 gallons of omega-3 oil in a seal, and it's worth $150 a gallon.
I'd like to speak to the...
Thank you for that. The time has gone over. I'm sorry. We'll go now to Mr. Champeau for 3 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gauthier, I'd like to go back to you because you've got me curious about the recipe that you just gave me, but we'll talk about that for another conversation. I'd like to talk about the situation of your museum. What are your sources of funding? I think it's important. I also sit on the Heritage Committee, so I'd like to see how we could help you. What are your sources of funding? Do you get funding from DFO, from Heritage Canada? How does it work? The museum is funded by the Ministère de la Culture in Quebec. We receive, depending on the project, we sometimes get grants from Heritage Canada to set up initial exhibits. We have produced over the past few years exhibits on the populations of seals in the St. Lawrence. We have 2 exhibits on this, not funded by DFO up until now, but that would be a very good idea. So it's done on a project-by-project basis. Do you think that if we want to, for example, in the Gas Bay area, in the slow season, it would be important to create attractions that would perhaps showcase the importance of the seal and the seal harvesting? Do you have projects? Yes. I wanted to mention earlier that we could set up outfitters for the seal hunt on the North Shore, in the St. Lawrence, and even in the Magdalen Islands. There, the tour season is from June to October, but in November, if we could pursue tourism with seal harvesting there and throughout Canada, have sports, maybe have a recreational seal hunt, that would be very interesting. And our region, we don't think that a managed seal hunt would hurt our population of seal. We could have show that we could do healthy management, produce meat, produce furs, and we need to educate people so that money is spent by tourists in our region. There's a lot of unemployment in our regions, and we would resolve a social-economic problem. Thank you very much for your perspective, and I can guarantee that I would like to go and visit your museum. Thank you.
We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 3 minutes or less to close it out, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to fully utilize these 3 minutes here. Okay, so first question, I wanted to actually follow up with Mr. Stabler. When we're talking about a sustainable seal harvest and utilizing the entire seal, do we have the current vessel capacity and equipment to be able to go out and sustainably harvest seals and not just do a cull? For clarification.
Well, there was never a cull in the question. It's a harvest base and a progressive harvest base, starting off at 5,000, moving incrementally forward. Given the state of our current fisheries fleet, yes, we have more than enough crew, boats on standby. Our plants are sitting idle, empty, because of the reduction in our fisheries production. And we have the guarantee of several of the ringleaders of these plant foundations that they will work with us, they will process, they will freeze, and they will distribute the product. It exists.
And do you agree with the argument that we need further investment then into the gear, the equipment, and the vessels in order to move forward with a sustainable seal harvest?
We do not need that on the West Coast. We are completely self-sufficient. All we need is the green light.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a quick question to Mr. Treitz. Mr. Treitz, is it Dr. Treitz? Sorry, I want to make sure I get it right. I think it's Dr. Treitz. Dr. Treitz. When you were speaking about the rewilding phenomenon, about the seals and sea lions entering back into the marine ecosystem, everything you're talking about that, I was thinking about the wolves in Yellowstone Park, and I was wondering if you can speak a little bit further about how that applies to what it is that we're talking about today.
What we're seeing around the world where wolves are being reintroduced, or beaver in Scotland, is the discovery that top-down predation is creating in terrestrial ecosystems greater stability, longer-term sustainability, biodiversity, and productivity. And I believe the same thing is underway in the Salish Sea, for example. We now have a data set we can look at to examine these questions. But it is something which is occurring around the world, and we haven't yet looked at marine ecosystems. But it gets to my side, which is the benefits that top-down predation brings, that I think that most people have not given enough thought to.
Much. And my last question, when we are looking at a sustainable seal harvest and taking an ecosystem-based approach and considering all the components, there was a quick mention around the open net finfish farms, and I'm wondering if you could speak to some of the harms in your experience that you've seen of open net fish farms in our surrounding ecosystems.
I haven't seen.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Treitz. I was going to ask that question to Mr. Stabler. Sorry for the confusion.
There's a myriad of silence around it. Some juries are still out. In my mind, it's not. They have introduced a couple of diseases. That's recognized known fact on the West Coast. They introduced parasite loading that wipes the smolts out, basically. They load them up with lice to the point they just no longer survive. The actual farm footprint underneath of that farm, if you look at the seafloor before the farm goes in, and you look at it a year later, you'll think a nuclear bomb hit it. And it spreads out from that, but it's only such a limited extent. So, again, back to the point, remove all the farms. Will it make any significant difference when they're under this level of depredation? In my mind, no.
We got it in on the mark. I want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Treitz, Ms. Gauthier, Mr. Stabler, and Mr. Pearce for your sharing your knowledge with the committee today. And I will remind our witnesses if there's anything they want to add in any way as part of their testimony, please mail that in to the committee and we'll make sure it is shared with the members.
Can that be emailed?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely. Okay. And for the benefit of the committee members, I wanted to report back on their request to travel to Norway. I did appear before the subcommittee and read in what we wanted to do and answered any questions they had. But when it came time to vote on it, the Conservative member voted against it. So we're on life support right now to do that trip. And the unfortunate part of it is we wanted to do this trip before we did a salmon trip for the Pinniped study to accommodate Mr. Small's study. So if you can do anything to your members to have a chat with them to tell them that it's important that we get to do this particular study and travel to Norway. So yes, chair, I heard that you're the real charmer. Again, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Merci, thank you.